clink of a champagne flute shattering on polished marble rang out like a gunshot in the middle of the lavish penthouse launch party. In the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, the city's elite mingled under golden chandeliers, their laughter bouncing off mirrored walls, entirely indifferent to the woman who dropped to her knees near the grand piano, silently mopping up the spill. Dressed in a navy blue cleaning uniform with no name tag, Monica Fields kept her eyes on the stain, determined to finish before the crowd moved in again. She was nearly done when a smooth, calculated voice sliced through the air above her. "So, you're the entertainment after the party." The words rolled off Bradley Kingsley's tongue with the kind of smugness that only came from generations of wealth and unchecked entitlement. He stood over her, towering in a midnight tuxedo Rolex, glinting under the chandelier, his smirk already assuming her answer. Monica lifted her gaze slowly, not with fear, but with the sharpness of someone who'd seen this before. Her 32 years had taught her exactly what kind of man stood before her. She had seen that look in college and boardrooms, and in more than one elevator where her silence had been mistaken for consent. This wasn't new. "I'm just part of the cleaning crew, sir," she replied evenly, her voice calm but firm. Bradley chuckled, stepping closer, his cologne invading the air between them. "Oh, come on. No need to play coy. I appreciate discretion. Very professional." His voice dropped lower. "I was told there'd be special services after the speeches. How much for the whole night?" She blinked once. Around them glasses clinked and waitstaff danced through with silver trays, but no one looked over. No one ever did when a black woman was being reduced to something silent. Someone invisible, someone usable. Bradley reached into his jacket pocket and casually pulled out a $100 bill. He made sure to hold it between two fingers so others could see. "Sweetheart," he said with a wink, "when you change your mind, I've got the penthouse at the plaza. Let's say 300 an hour, generous no." There was laughter nearby, low, cruel laughter. A couple of men in suits glanced over, exchanging knowing smirks. A woman in diamonds whispered something into her friend's ear, and both chuckled without shame. Monica could feel the heat of their ridicule rising around her like a silent fire, but she refused to let it burn through her resolve. She rose slowly, standing straight, her posture impossibly dignified for someone wearing slip-resistant shoes and carrying a mop. Her eyes didn't waver as they met Bradley's. For a split second, something in him shifted: confusion, discomfort, something he didn't quite understand. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Kingsley," she said, voice clipped, clear, not a trace of hesitation. "But I have principles, and they're not for sale." The space between them tightened, charged. Her accent wasn't Bronx or Brooklyn. It was crisp, educated, articulate. The kind of tone that didn't belong to someone scrubbing floors. And that unsettled him more than he was willing to admit. He opened his mouth, but nothing witty came out. She didn't wait for a response. She turned back to her cleaning supplies, unfazed. But inside, something clicked into place. He had just confirmed every suspicion she'd had about Kingsley Holdings. He'd walked right into the trap and didn't even know it yet. Bradley scoffed and strutted away, his entourage still chuckling, his confidence untouched. He believed the moment had ended in his favor. What he didn't know, what no one in that glittering ballroom suspected, was that Monica Fields wasn't just a janitor trying to survive. She was watching, listening, gathering, and tonight she had just chosen her next target. 3 days later, Monica's phone buzzed with a message she'd been expecting. It came from Jennifer, the supervisor at the cleaning agency she occasionally contracted with when she needed to get close to certain circles. Monica didn't answer right away. She already knew what the call would be. When she finally picked up, Jennifer's voice was thin with discomfort. "Monica, I'm really sorry, but I've been asked not to assign you to any more corporate events." There was a beat of silence. The request came directly from Kingsley Holdings. Of course it did. Jennifer sighed like she wanted to say more but couldn't. "Apparently someone said you were inappropriate, and they implied you made certain suggestions. I tried to push back, but it's fine." Monica cut in, her voice low and sharp. "Did he say anything else?" Another pause. "Well, Bradley, Mr. Kingsley suggested that maybe you should reconsider your professional priorities. He said there are other kinds of services that would ensure you stay on the roster for high-profile events." Monica didn't reply. She didn't need to. The temperature in her apartment seemed to drop a few degrees. She looked around at her modest but meticulously organized studio in the Bronx. In one corner was a worn couch with a laptop balanced on a stack of law books. Next to it, two large metal filing boxes labeled Open Cases and Closed Justice. She ended the call without another word. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She simply crossed the room, opened her laptop, and pulled up a folder she hadn't touched in months. Atasia Wintel. Kingsley Holdings. For weeks, she'd quietly been observing patterns, monitoring whispers, and documenting incidents around the company. Her gut had told her there was rot beneath the marble floors. Bradley's mistake had simply confirmed it. Monica wasn't just a woman scorned. She was a strategist. And this wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. It was systemic. And she had receipts. She dove in scanning corporate filings, SEC record shell companies connected to off-the-books transactions. There were red flags buried beneath layers of legal gloss. Underpaid subcontractors, suspicious political donations, departments with turnover rates off the charts, especially among women of color. That night, as New York's skyline blinked in and out of fog, Monica sat under the dim light of a desk lamp, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her eyes were bloodshot, but her focus never wavered. She wasn't building a case. She was building a weapon. Each document she opened only fueled her more. There were patterns. Bradley's fingerprints were on more than one incident. A deleted email here, a silence complaint there, and always the same formula: intimidate, discredit, erase. But this time he'd picked the wrong woman to erase. At 3:12 a.m., she paused long enough to refill her coffee and scan the whiteboard beside her. Scrawled in red marker was a single phrase: humiliation is fuel. She added a bullet beneath it: target uses influence to punish rejection. Possible pattern. Then she opened a new tab and typed in the name Aisha Clark, civil rights attorney, known for high-profile class actions against discriminatory employers. Respected, strategic, dangerous to the powerful. Exactly what Monica needed. She picked up the phone and began drafting the message in her mind. Something calm, professional, with just enough gravity to get a meeting. Ms. Clark, my name is Monica Fields. I believe I have information regarding systemic discrimination and retaliation by Kingsley Holdings. I also believe I can prove it. She hit send. Across town, Bradley Kingsley slept peacefully in a high-rise penthouse, completely unaware that the woman he'd tried to reduce to silence had just opened the first chapter in a campaign that would rip his empire apart, one record, one voice, one truth at a time. By the time Aisha Clark replied, Monica had already infiltrated her next battlefield. She'd swapped her mop and gloves for a crisp black server's uniform, her curls tucked under a sleek bun, a tray of flutes balanced effortlessly on her hand. Another night, another ballroom. But this one was smaller, more intimate, an exclusive dinner for real estate tycoons and city officials. The very crowd Bradley Kingsley orbited, like a sun in his own solar system of influence. Monica moved quietly through the room, her eyes open ears, sharper than any recorder. No one looked at her twice. That was the magic and the curse of invisibility. People like her they assumed didn't matter. That ignorance was her weapon. At the far end of the room, she spotted him. Bradley, holding court near the marble fireplace, laughing too loud, retelling the story. She knew he'd turned into a joke, the maid who thought she had standards. A group of donors guffawed around him, their eyes flashing with the cruelty of the powerful board. And I offered her 100 just to see if she'd break. Bradley said, sipping his wine. She looked at me like she had a Harvard degree or something. I mean, cleaning floors. Come on. Monica didn't flinch. She simply refilled a glass, nodded politely, and moved on, even as the senator's wife muttered, "They're always pretending to have morals until you show them the money." Her friend laughed behind a jeweled hand. Each word was burned into memory. Later that night, Monica stood by the service elevator, her tray empty, her phone recording, quietly from her pocket. She wasn't just gathering dirt, she was identifying connections, loyalties, the entire web Bradley had spun around himself. And that's when she saw someone unexpected. Marcus Sloan, civil rights advocate, congressional liaison, and more importantly, rumored to be involved in drafting legislation on labor discrimination reform. He was alone, standing by the edge of the bar, scrolling his phone. Without thinking, Monica approached. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. He looked up ready to dismiss her until he saw her eyes. There was something in them. Not fear, not deference. Purpose. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Not here. It's about Kingsley Holdings, and a pattern of behavior I can prove." Marcus narrowed his eyes. She slid a business card across the bar, no logo, just a phone number, and a name: Monica Fields, investigative auditor. Then she turned and disappeared into the kitchen like a ghost. That night, she walked home through the city, the sounds of traffic and late-night chatter humming around her like white noise. She could feel the story tightening. The walls around Kingsley weren't closing in yet, but the blueprints were drawn and she was laying bricks fast. The next morning, her phone rang. It was Aisha Clark. "I reviewed your email," the lawyer said. "Normally, I'd pass something like this to an associate, but something in the way you wrote it got my attention. You said you had evidence." "I have more than evidence," Monica replied. "I have their pattern, their paper trail, their culture. I've got voices, and they've been silenced long enough." There was a pause, then the lawyer's voice softened. "Let's meet. Tonight. Discreetly." Monica nodded, even though no one was there to see it. As she hung up, a smile tugged at her mouth for the first time in days. Bradley's biggest mistake hadn't been underestimating her intelligence. It hadn't even been the $100 bill or the smug grin. His mistake had been thinking she was alone. The meeting with Aisha took place that evening in the back corner of a quiet cafe in Harlem. The rain outside smeared the city lights across the window pane, but inside the conversation was sharp and focused. Monica slid a manila folder across the table, neatly labeled, methodically organized. Aisha opened it, scanning the contents with a lawyer's trained eye. "This isn't just a harassment claim," she murmured, flipping through internal emails, financial records, and a chart Monica had created showing patterns of retaliation against women, especially women of color, who had pushed back against inappropriate advances or unethical practices at Kingsley Holdings. "It's a culture," Monica said quietly. "A machine built on silence and threat, and it starts at the top." Aisha closed the folder slowly. "We won't just file a complaint," she said. "We'll go federal, EEOC, press, class action if we can find others." "We will," Monica said. "Trust me, they're out there." A week later, a story aired on CBS. It started with a question: is one of New York's most powerful real estate empires built on corruption, intimidation, and discrimination? Monica's voice wasn't in it. Not yet. But the evidence was. Audio clips, redacted documents, anonymous quotes from former employees. The piece was damning. And it was only the beginning. At Kingsley Holdings, panic spread like a contagion. The press office went dark. Executives began deleting old emails. PR firms were called in. But none of that could stop what was already coming. At 8:46 a.m. on a gray Monday morning, Monica sat in her Bronx apartment as her inbox pinged with messages from former employees. "I saw the story. I've been waiting for someone to speak up. He did the same to me. They pushed me out after I complained. I still have the emails." She didn't smile, not yet. There was still work to do. Across town, Bradley Kingsley stood in the middle of a conference room, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. His assistant hovered near the door, pale and nervous. "Sir, the board wants to schedule a call. Investors are panicking." And what?" Bradley snapped. "There's a lawyer named Aisha Clark. She's representing multiple former employees. There's a federal investigation now." His phone buzzed again. Twitter was trending with the hashtag Kingsley Exposed. Bradley's jaw tightened. "It's just noise," he muttered. "This will blow over." But it didn't. That afternoon, Monica and Aisha held a press conference in front of the courthouse. Aisha stood firm, articulate, razor sharp as she detailed the scope of the case. Monica stood beside her, composed and steady in a dark gray blazer. Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions. But when one asked Monica why she hadn't come forward sooner, she stepped to the mic herself. "I wasn't silent because I was afraid," she said. "I was silent because I was watching, listening, building, waiting for the moment when my voice wouldn't just be heard but echoed." The crowd hushed. Bradley watched the footage from his penthouse, a tumbler of scotch in hand. The woman he'd tried to humiliate in front of his peers was now center stage, and every sentence she spoke chipped away at the empire he'd spent years crafting. But what he didn't understand was this: Monica hadn't come to destroy a man. She'd come to expose a system, and every spotlight that turned her way made it harder for anyone to ever dim her again. The next morning, Monica woke to a phone full of missed calls, emails, and texts from journalists, strangers, even former classmates who hadn't spoken to her in a decade. Her name was everywhere, but she didn't bask in the attention. She knew this part of the storm, the rush of publicity before the real work began. What mattered now wasn't visibility, it was precision. That afternoon, she walked into a CNN studio composed and ready. It was her first live interview, and she sat across from the anchor with the poise of someone who had spent years preparing for a moment she never asked for, but would not waste. The anchor leaned forward. "Monica, if you could say one thing to Bradley Kingsley right now, what would it be?" She didn't blink. "I would say, now you know who you're dealing with." Across the city in a dim conference room, surrounded by lawyers and crisis consultants, Bradley watched the interview unfold in silence. Each clip, each headline, each piece of evidence publicly aired chipped away at his illusion of control. But still he clung to the fantasy that his wealth would protect him, that settlements, NDAs, and character assassinations would once again clean up his mess. He underestimated how different Monica was, because while his team scrambled to issue statements, discredit witnesses, and leak rumors to sympathetic outlets, Monica kept releasing more. Screenshots of deleted emails, signed memos instructing supervisors to monitor outspoken employees, HR reports buried in confidential files. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard of proof, and the public responded. More former employees came forward emboldened. One woman described being demoted after rejecting Bradley's after-hours invitation. Another recounted how her complaint vanished, and she was reassigned to a lower-paying position in retaliation. Their faces blurred, voices altered, but their pain was unmistakable and eerily similar. On Twitter, Yashashar Kingsley Exposed hit 1 million mentions. By the end of the week, it was trending globally. Inside Monica's office, a modest but buzzing space now filled with interns, advocates, and stacks of affidavits. Aisha dropped a thick manila envelope on her desk. 50 million, Aisha said. "That's what we're filing for emotional distress, defamation, retaliation, and more." Monica didn't even look up from her laptop. "Let's make sure the number isn't the headline," she said. "Let the pattern be." Aisha smiled. "You always did like going for the root." But it wasn't just about Bradley anymore. The case had become a mirror reflecting the deeper rot inside corporate America, where power protected predators and silenced dissent. Monica's calm dismantling of that facade struck a chord. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't burning bridges. She was documenting surgically, relentlessly. And the damage was irreversible. When asked by a reporter why she hadn't simply settled privately and moved on, Monica answered without flinching. "Because this isn't just about me. It's about every woman who was told she was overreacting, every employee who was punished for speaking up, every person who swallowed humiliation just to keep a job. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in a system that doesn't make people choose between dignity and survival." That clip aired on every major network, and for the first time in his career, Bradley Kingsley's name no longer conjured images of power or prestige. It conjured shame. By the end of the month, Bradley Kingsley's empire wasn't just bruised, it was crumbling in real time. Contracts were pulled, investors fled. His name, once stamped on towering buildings and gala invitations, became synonymous with disgrace. One by one, the doors he used to walk through without question began to close. Quietly at first, then loudly, deliberately. The final blow came in the form of a ruling from the Federal Labor Commission. Kingsley Holdings had violated multiple employment and civil rights statutes. Fines were levied, investigations expanded, and Monica Fields stood once again in front of flashing cameras, not as a victim, not even as a whistleblower, but as the face of a movement no one could ignore anymore. 6 months later, she had traded in her Bronx apartment for an office suite on the 27th floor of a downtown skyscraper. The plaque outside read MF Risk Audit and Associates. Inside, the walls were lined with case files, not trophies, blueprints. Each one a system dismantled, a culture restructured. Monica didn't want to be famous. She wanted to build something that outlasted her name. 3 new contracts this week, her assistant Thomas said, placing a folder on her desk. All 3 said the same thing: they don't want a Kingsley problem hiding in their companies. Monica smiled, but only briefly. She had learned that justice didn't rest. And the farther you climbed, the more people waited to pull you down. That afternoon, Jennifer, the former supervisor from the cleaning agency, walked into her office unannounced. She looked different, a little older, a little heavier in the eyes. But she carried something softer too, a kind of remorse that had finally found the courage to face itself. "I just wanted to say—" "I'm sorry," Jennifer said, voice trembling. "I knew it was wrong when I removed you from the event list. I was scared. I didn't want to lose my job." Monica stood and walked over slowly. For a second, Jennifer seemed unsure if she should leave, but Monica reached out and pulled her into a gentle hug. "You don't have to apologize," she said quietly. "Doing the right thing when it's easy, that's common. Doing it when it's dangerous, that's what counts." Jennifer broke down, and in that moment, Monica realized something she hadn't before. Her fight hadn't just exposed rot. It had reminded people they had a spine. A few weeks later, Monica was invited to speak at Columbia Business School. The same halls where she once scrubbed bathroom tiles to pay for night classes now welcomed her as an honored guest. She stood at the podium looking out at a sea of eager young faces, some of whom reminded her of herself, bright, underestimated, burning quietly with ambition. "If there's one thing I want you to remember," she said, "it's this: never let someone's perception of your role determine your worth. You might be holding a mop today. That doesn't mean you don't belong at the head of the table tomorrow." In the front row, a young black student raised his hand. "Ms. Fields," he asked, "how did you hold on to your dignity through everything?" Monica paused, letting the weight of the question settle in the room. "Because I knew exactly who I was," she said. "And humiliation only sticks if you accept the version of you that someone else tries to hand you." After the applause faded and she stepped out into the Manhattan evening, she passed the hotel where everything had started. The Grand Pavilion had been renamed, renovated, and just inside the lobby stood a small plaque dedicated to those who refused to kneel. Monica stopped for a moment, her reflection caught in the polished glass. And then she walked on, not with revenge in her heart, but with legacy in her step. Weeks passed, and Monica found herself busier than ever, traveling to conferences, consulting for ethics committees, building programs to train minority auditors and whistleblower investigators. Her name carried weight now, not because of fame, but because of what it represented. Quiet resilience turned into unstoppable force. Still, she hadn't thought about Bradley Kingsley in a while. Not really, until a message from Aisha popped up on her phone. He tried to get on the board of a small consulting firm, got unanimously rejected. Staff rallied against him, mostly women and people of color. "Just thought you should know." Monica read it twice, then let the phone fall gently onto her desk. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. The truth was, she had stopped keeping score a long time ago. Bradley's fall hadn't been her mission. It had just been the inevitable outcome of someone finally holding up a mirror. And he hadn't liked what he saw. But the real victory wasn't in watching him fall. It was in knowing that she and others like her could finally rise without asking permission. Still, the world hadn't forgotten. Patricia Bell and Gloria Hughes, those women at the gala who'd once giggled at her humiliation, now appeared on panels for corporate diversity, smiling beside black executives they never would have spoken to months earlier. They made statements, reposted Monica's quotes. One even claimed to have always believed in her. It was laughable in a way, but Monica didn't waste energy chasing hypocrisy. The world would sort those people out on its own time. The only moment that caught her off guard was Jennifer's second visit. This time she came not with an apology, but with news. After seeing Monica's journey, she had reported 3 other cases of racial bias at her former cleaning agency. One of those reports had led to a wrongful termination being overturned. "I don't know if I would have spoken up without seeing you," Jennifer said, standing a little straighter. "But I get it now. Silence doesn't protect us. It just gives them more space." Monica squeezed her hand. "Then you already won." That evening, Monica returned to her Upper East Side apartment. Outside her window, Manhattan shimmered in gold and steel, alive with stories, some still buried, some breaking free. She made herself tea and sat by the window. Her reflection in the glass looked peaceful. Not victorious, not fierce, just whole. She thought of her mother scrubbing stairs in silence, of that night on her knees wiping wine from marble, while a man with everything mistook her for someone with nothing. Of how far she'd come, not just in status, but in self. She didn't want revenge anymore. What she wanted, what she had built, was a legacy. something her younger self could have looked up to, something others could now reach for. The next morning, as she walked to a speaking engagement across town, she passed the newly renamed hotel. There, near the front entrance, was the plaque she'd once stopped to read. But this time she saw something new. Beneath the original words, "Dedicated to those who refuse to kneel," someone had engraved a name, Monica Fields, 1991 present. She stood quietly for a moment, hand brushing the metal. That night in her speech to a packed auditorium of future business leaders, she didn't talk about lawsuits or headlines. She simply said this: "The most expensive mistake you can make is underestimating someone who refuses to play the role you've written for them." And somewhere not far away, Bradley Kingsley sat in a dim office staring at a job rejection email. He was no longer feared, no longer adored, just a man alone with his arrogance, finally realizing it had never been power, it had only ever been insulation. Now that insulation was gone. And Monica, she was just getting started. If Monica's journey moved you, we invite you to subscribe and be part of a community that believes in justice, dignity, and the quiet power of standing tall. Thank you for watching.